Hi, welcome everybody. This is Vinod Jayaraman from Fronius, Denmark. I hope you all can hear me clear. Could you please raise your hands if you can hear me? Yeah, thanks, Emily. Thanks for responding. So today's webinar is about the Fronius Smart Meter TS, new Fronius Smart Meter TS. You are all very familiar with the old one, I guess. The new one is also kind of same. There is not much different in the technical aspect, but to look, there is some difference because it's a new one. It's a touch screen, and there are other options like a terminal resistance are different here. Let's see the difference and how to install and commission this new smart meter in the webinar today. Yep. So the agenda today is Fronius Smart Meter TS. We will first look into the technical data and then energy profiling and visualization, then installation. Just a moment, looks like somebody raised the hand. Okay, now all clear. Yeah. And then the installation, how to cable the smart meter in the correct way, and the data communication of the smart meter to the inverter and to the solar web, and then the commissioning of the smart meter. How to activate the smart meter in the Gen24 interface page, and also the Snap Inverter series interface page. Then configuration of a smart meter in the display, because when it comes to multiple smart meter usage for energy profiling, you need to configure the numbering of the smart meter in the display. Let's see how to do it, and then the additional settings like a dynamic feed-in limitation, things like that. We'll see in detail. Yeah, and as I mentioned, there is no, if you see this picture on the right side, this is the new Smart Meter TS touchscreen. When you look, it kind of similar to look into this, it's kind of similar to the old Smart Meter, but there is no button. In the old Smart Meter, you can see there were two buttons for the up and down and the enter, and also you cannot use this use that old smart meter as a touchscreen. But apart from that, these three new smart meters, they are kind of same. Basically, why do you need a smart meter? It's used for analysis and visualization of a consumption data. And also it's very important, why it is important to know the consumption, so that you can, on the one hand, in the daytime you will be producing a lot of energy, and on the other hand you will be consuming a lot of energy in the evenings. So maybe you can shift the loads from evening to the daytime, or maybe you can store the energy from daytime and use it in the evenings. So this is why it's very important to understand the consumption pattern, and then you can efficiently control the energy flow in the home. So these smart meters, like the old one, they are bidirectional smart meter. It measures between the consumption from the grid and feeding energy to the grid. But if you put them in the consumption path, it will measure only the consumption of the loads, any specific loads at your interest. So the main differences: terminal resistor required for the old Fronius smart meter. I believe there are no more normal Fronius smart meter available in the market. Maybe in case if it is available, you can still use them, just to make sure that the terminal resistor, there will be a physical terminal resistor in the old one, and the new Fronius smart meter TS, it's like you have to set it via the cable. You have to put a cable in between two points in the smart meter. So the resistor is inbuilt. Just have to bridge it. And then connections, L1, load 1, sorry, phase 1, 2, 3 is in the bottom. And then here it's in the up and down. It's also in the top and also in the bottom in both space. And settings were made by two buttons. If you see the left-hand side picture, the button P is for program, and then arrow button is for next. That's the two buttons you are using in the past. But here in the new version, it's a touch screen. So the bottom of the screen, you can see three buttons. We will see the details in the upcoming slides about these three buttons. And then the dimension, it's a different 4 times 18 millimeter, and here it's a 3DU, so 3 times 18 millimeter, so smaller. The new smart meter is smaller and smart. Then the categories, 100A1 is the single phase for residential system. I believe in our market, Nordics, we do not have a single phase systems much. So directly we will go to the 3-phase system. So the second one is the 65A3, and then the third one is 5KA3. It looks, the technical specification is same like the previous versions, like the 65 amps and the 5 kiloamps. So both of them are 3-phase, and then the AC cable cross section for the 65A3 is 1 to 16 square millimeter. But here, if you see in the 5KA3, the cross section is smaller because you need one lead to measure the voltage, because you are going to use external current sensors here in this 5KA3 smart meter. If you look into the schematics of the smart meter, like where do you position them, normally we recommend right after the utility meter. So when the electricity connection point at home is coming from the grid, there will be a meter, and then after that there will be some protections like fusing or other switches. Then right after these switches, please put this Fronius Smart Meter TS or Fronius Smart Meter, so that you will place them in the feed-in point. This is called feed-in point. It is mandatory to put the smart meter, primary smart meter, in the feed-in point for all the battery solutions with the backup power, because it has to tell whenever there is excess energy flowing from the grid, it has to tell the inverter that now the battery has to discharge the power to supply the load. So that's how it's charging and discharging the battery. And then there is another place you can also install this smart meter, that's called the consumption path. You can put right before the load or any consumption. In case for some reason, if it is not possible to install it in the feed-in path, you can also install this in the consumption path. But remember, there is a difference between the feed-in and consumption path. You cannot measure everything where is the energy coming from, if it is from the PV or is it from the grid. And then energy profiling. So what is energy profiling? That can be a situation where you are going to use multiple Fronius smart meter in one system. Why? Maybe there is a need to monitor any specific load. For example, let's say that the first smart meter in the feed-in path, we call it as a primary smart meter. Then whenever there is an excess, why do you need a primary smart meter? Maybe you want to measure the whole consumption of the homes, or in case if you have a battery or a kind of Fronius Home Pilot, you need a smart meter, because this smart meter tells whenever there is energy going out from the home or coming from the grid. It has to tell whenever excess energy going to the grid, this smart meter, primary smart meter, has to communicate to the inverter and tell the Home Pilot, hey, now you can charge the heating device at home because I'm having excess energy. Or the other side as well. If you have battery, it's the same. And then still, okay, let's say this customer has an electric vehicle and he has a wall box. Then he want to measure his charging, how much he's charging his electric vehicle. Then he can place a secondary smart meter in this consumption path, and then he can configure this as a secondary smart meter. He can address it, and then he has to mention it whenever he configure this smart meter. He has to mention it if it is in feed-in path or consumption path. That's how it knows which direction he has to measure the energy. Then to look on the right side, if you see this diagram, maybe this sounds familiar to somebody who is already using this energy profiling. So you can see the different values in the different color codes in the energy balance of the solar web, Fronius solar web. So this yellow color is charging of battery, and then this blue color is the Home Pilot energy, which goes to the heating system, and then the green is the excess energy which fed into the grid, and then this gray region, the gray bar, you can say this one belongs to the wall box. But in future, it's going to change. We will have different color codes for everything, please stay up to date with our webinars. In case if you want to have a detailed look about how much you consumed in a specific load or how much you are producing, then you can go to the analysis menu. Then under this analysis menu, if you go to the history, then you can see your daily or monthly or annual specific consumption or production. Then you will see this bar like the right side. Then you can see, for example, here this blue color is the energy meter, which shows how much energy you consumed through the air conditioning, and then the green color is how much energy you consumed through the electric stove, and then the purple or pink color shows the energy you are produced from the PV. So this one on the right side, you see the bar and the values. This is the monthly view. You can also go to the daily view. That's on the left side. This is how it looks if you see the daily view. Or you can on this you can select if you don't want to see just the electric stove, if you want to only see the air condition or whatever, or if you want to only see the production, you can choose time to time and see the results, how it looks. Well, how to install them? Because many times, even when it comes to inverter or the smart meter, many times we don't pay close attention to the torque values, but it is very, very important. Maybe you get it right 1 or 2 times when you try, even if there is an error, if you try 1 or 2 times the connection, maybe you get it right. But to get it right in the first time itself, you have to pay close attention to everything. For example, these torque values. So the maximum torque you can apply to the output side, output cables are 2.8 Newton meter. If it is in the 5KA3 smart meter, then the torque value is maximum 0.6 Newton meter. Because these cables are small, you are going to use only for the there are no loads. This is not actual phase you are measuring going through. It's only the voltage value you are going to measure here. So that's why this torque value is very, very less. So the cable will be smaller. And then if it is the data cable, then you have to use maximum 0.4 Newton meter only. This data cable is same for all 3 types of the smart meter, like 100A1, 65A3 or 5KA3. They are all same. And there is a protection cover whenever you are using these cabling of data cables. Please make sure the protection cover for the faces are closed, and then the sealable terminal covers are available. This is to protect the all terminals. So if you look into the connection diagram, then there is a fusing option provided. If your local regulation, it is not mandatory from Fronius side. In case if there is a local regulation from your country demand the fusing, then you can go for 350 milliamps. That's the minimum you can go for. And then other thing is that if you are the right side picture showing the cabling of Modbus cabling of a Gen 24, this picture may not be familiar to many of you. So this is from the pilot. That's the data manager in the Snap Inverter series. We call the module as a data manager. Here it's called pilot. So the orange plug in the pilot has 2 Modbus connection, namely M0 and M1. For example, if we are talking about a system where you are not using only the primary smart meter, but also if you have a battery or if you have a home pilot, you need another Modbus point. In that case, you can use it here. And whenever it comes to data communication cabling, please remember there are 3 points which can make sure your Modbus is working fine. Is use a shielded cable and ground the shield on one side. There is an option especially for the shield in the Gen 24 series in the pilot, but in the Snap Inverter series you can use it in the ground. You can use the ground to connect this. And then other thing is set a terminal resistor for the Modbus. So whenever, if you have more than 2 devices, for example, if you have inverter Gen 24 and then the smart meter and then the battery, so you have 3 devices, you always have to the end devices has to be terminated with this 120 ohm resistance. In the inverter Gen 24, you will have a switch right above this orange plug. There will be a switch. You have to put it in the position 1. And in the smart meter, you have to bridge a cable between the connection point 7 and 9. This way, you are enabling the terminal resistor. And then the other important thing to make sure the communication works well is that use a twisted pair cable always for the data plus and data minus. In this Gen 24, it's marked as MO plus and MO minus. So always use a twisted pair cable for this so that you can be sure that your connection works fine. And if you look into this Snap Inverter series, this is how it works. The bottom right corner, you can see the data manager picture from the Snap Inverters. So there will be only one orange plug, and then on the top right side, you can see the marking D plus and D minus of the. So these are the Modbus connection in the Snap Inverter series. But otherwise, it's the same like the Gen 24. You don't have to do anything special, except there is the resistor. So if you are wondering where is the terminal resistor in the data manager, behind the antenna connection point, you can see the tiny white switch. You have to enable this in the on position in order to turn on the terminal resistance. And it's the same for the Fronius hybrid manager. So if you are using a Fronius Simo hybrid, it's the same. And installation or cabling of the Fronius Smart Meter 5KA3, that's the commercial smart meter. Like the normal 65A3, it's also the same connection when it comes to the data cabling. Just the data plus and data minus in the Snap inverters are called as MO plus and MO minus in the Gen 24. So you will be using MO plus, MO minus, and the ground. And please ground the shield of the cable in one side. And then the smart meter 5KA3 also has the same terminal resistance. You have to bridge this connection point 10 and 12. If you see it in the previous smart meter, the numbers are 7 and 9. Here it's 10 and 12. 10 and 12. So just pay close attention to the quick guide or the manual whenever you're doing it. So bridge a cable between 10 and 12, then you are turning on the terminal resistor. But then if you look into the phase cables, you are not going to measure you are not going to put the cables directly into the smart meter. You are going to use a current transformers for the current measurements here. And another very important thing, if you see the bottom of the smart meter, you can see neutral and phase 1 connection. This means you need to provide external power supply for this smart meter. So that's very important. And then this 350 milliamp fuses, these are optional. If your local regulation demands it, you can use it. Otherwise, it's not mandatory from your side. It's an optional one for you. And then there's a fuse recommendation. If you are using, I don't think we are using it in the Scandinavian or Nordic countries, but just if you are using, then you can use the DIN rail mounting fuse holder. Then the minimum rating must be 350 milliamps, or you can use the higher fusing based on your cable's cross section. You can decide your fusing. Data communication cable, as I mentioned earlier, all the 3 smart meters, single phase or the 3-phase 65A3 or 5KA3, they're all same. And please make sure you are using the cable protection cover on for the phases whenever you are doing the cable connection for the Modbus. And then this M plus, M minus, these are the data cables in the pilot, and D plus, D minus are the data cables in the previous normal existing Snap inverters. So you will be connecting it to the smart meter point. Like here it's numbered as 8, 9, and 10. So M plus, M minus, and the ground. That's respectively. So use the cables and always use the twisted pair cable, and then the cable, and please make sure that the cables are at least Cat 5 or higher classes. Yeah, and don't forget the terminal resistance. This is very, very important for the end devices. And please ground the shield of the cable on one side. I will try to answer the questions. Sorry, I forgot to mention it in the earlier. Since I'm only one person handling this webinar, I will be answering the questions in the end. Yeah, let's see. Then commissioning. Of course, connecting the smart meter is one part, and the second part is commissioning. You have to tell the system there is a smart meter connected to it. So you have to reach the inverter's interface page. If it is the Gen 24 device, you can activate it. So since you do not have a display in the Gen 24, you simply touch the center button one time, then you will be opening the access point. Connect your smart device. It can be laptop or mobile phone. Connect your smart device to this inverter's Wi-Fi, and then you can go to the page. If you are using the app, Fronius Start app, directly it will take you to the start page. If you are going to use the browser, then you have to manually enter this IP address 192.168.250.181. This is same from the previous data managers. So if you use this IP address, you will reach the interface page of the inverter, pilot, or the normal data managers. As soon as you enter, then you can go to the components. Under the components, you can choose smart meter, and then you can choose if it is the primary smart meter, and then you have to choose the position of the smart meter. Is it in the grid connection point, that is feed-in point, or is it in the consumption path? If you're measuring any special load, you have to do it, and then it will be like you have to add it, and then you have to give the Modbus address. That's very important. Same way, if you are using the multiple smart meters in one system, you have to change the address. By default, all the smart meters are addressed as one. If you're using just one smart meter, you don't have to do anything. You can just click add. And then if it is the Snap Inverter series, SIMO or SIMO Hybrid or Echo, then you have to go to the inverter display, and then you have to go to setup and activate Wi-Fi access point. You have to connect your laptop or smartphone to it, and then go to a browser and type in the IP address. Then you will be taken to the interface page of the data manager. In this, there will be a menu called meter. You have to choose what meter. If it is a Fronius Smart Meter, or it will show S0 meter. So just choose Fronius Smart Meter, and then you have to choose if you have installed the smart meter in the feed-in point or the consumption point. Then click OK. You can also cross-check the Modbus address here if you are choosing the right meters. Then if you have any secondary meter, you can choose it, and then you can add where you have placed it, or you can name it differently. That's optional. So now you have set up everything in the inverter, but how do you set up an address to the smart meter itself? Like as I said, if you are using multiple smart meters, then how do you name it? Well, using the if you see the rightmost picture, then it shows what is the symbol in the bottom of the smart meter display means. So this symbol is up, which shows the up arrow. On the right side is the down arrow, that's the down. Navigating in the menu, you can down. And then the center symbol is the enter. So when you press enter for 2 seconds, then you will be in the programming page. Then you have to select P1 with the up and down button. So as soon as you go to P1, then it will ask for the password. You have to enter the password 2633. It's the same. And then after entering this, you will be allowed to move down in the P program buttons. Then you will go to P14. Then you press enter for 2 seconds, then you will enter into the menu. So always press enter for 2 seconds. to enter into any menu or to save any settings. Yeah, and then you can configure or select the Modbus address. You can choose if it is 1 or 2, it's up to you. Then as soon as you press enter, it will save. Then you have to go to the P18, then press enter for 2 seconds to complete this setup and then go out. Yeah. And another information about configuring in the inverter, smart meter display is you have to set up the ratio of the current sensors. Remember, I mentioned that for the 5K3 smart meter, you have to use current sensors, external current sensors. Then after calculating the ratio, for example, if the primary and secondary, then you can decide the factor like if it is 50 on primary and 5 on secondary, then the factor is 10. You just simply divide it. If it is 100 and if it is 100 on the primary side and 5 on secondary side, then the factor will be 20, things like that. So normally factors will be printed on the sensor directly, or it will say the primary and secondary side values. Then you have to enter this factor into the smart meter display. Then it's the same way. If you press enter for 2 seconds, then you can go to the program menu of the smart meter. Otherwise, if you use up and down, you will simply see the values of the smart readings in the smart meter. So whenever you want to configure something, you have to press enter for 2 seconds so that you will be inside the programming menu. And then you have to enter the password 2633 using the left and right up and down keys. Then as soon as you press enter for 2 seconds, you will say yes, confirm the password, and then you have to navigate to the menu P4. Here you have to enter the same way, press 2 seconds. Then in the menu P4, you have to select the ratio of the current sensors you have chosen to use. Then after entering the ratio, you have to go to the P18 menu, and then you have to press enter for 2 seconds for completion. So always P1 is like a password entering into the menu, and P18 is saving and exiting the programming menu. What is the selection criteria for our current sensors? We do not have any direct recommendation of any brands of current sensors to use, but we do have one recommendation on the selection criteria. Remember, the power of the current transformer must be always greater than the sum of the power of the Fronius Smart Meter and the cables. So, what is the power of the Fronius Smart Meter? The own consumption of the 5Ka3 Smart Meter is 0.5 VA, so 0.5 watts. And then, what is the power of the cable? Because the sum of power of cable and the smart meter must be less. The current transformer power must be greater always. So there is a small table mentioned here which shows the line resistance at different cross section for a copper wire. So for different cable length and different cross section, the power will be different. For example, if you look into this row 3 in the tabular column, you can see the cross section for 1.5 cable, copper cable is, if you are using 0.5 meter cable, then the power of this cable is 0.3 VA. So the total power of the smart meter and the cable is here 0.8 VA. So this is how you calculate. If you want to have more information about this selection criteria, you can always find it in the operating instruction of our Fronius Smart Meter TS. Where do you find this operating instruction? Please go to fronius.com, and then if you go to solar energy, then under the info center, you can find the options like news, reference, and the installer support. In installer support, you will find all the operating manuals and all other technical guides for installation or commissioning of not only the smart meter, but all the devices, all the inverters and everything. So if you go to the Fronius Smart Meter TS operating manual, you will find more information about the selection criteria. You will be having this detailed version. Then additional settings. What else apart from configuring or configuring the smart meter in the display, apart from configuring the smart meter in the interface page of the inverter, what are all the additional settings I can do with the smart meters? Well, For example, you can do dynamic feed-in limitation. Maybe there is a restriction due to the fuse, or for example, country like Germany, they restrict, the national regulation says that you cannot export more than 70% of your total system size. If you have 10 kilowatt system, then you cannot export more than 7 kilowatts. So in this situation, you have to limit your system to 7 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt, whatever the situation. Then you cannot simply restrict your system to produce only 7 kilowatt all the time, because you will be you will lose more energy then, more production then. So that's why you need to configure dynamic feed-in. So based on the consumption, this feed-in will always be adjusted. The inverter will make sure that the feed-in does not exceed the value you mentioned here. So how to set up this value? If you go to the interface page, this is the Snap Inverter series for the data manager cards. So if you go to this interface page, you will have an option called DNO editor. Under this DNO editor, you will find dynamic power reduction. Then you can choose for the limit for entire system. Then you have to enter the total DC power of the system. Let's say it's 1000 watt peak, 10,000 watt peak, whatever the watt peak panels you are having, or the DC power, that's the total watt peak from the panels, or the inverter output power, you can say there. Then the maximum production power of entire system, you can limit either by percentage or by watt. You can say you want to limit 10%, only produce 10% of the, or only feed in 10% of the system. For example, in case of Germany here, it's very simple. You don't have to calculate about the amps or wattage. You can simply put the 70% here. So the maximum power production of the entire system will be limited to 70% whenever, that's the feed-in limitation. Or if it is so how to, there is a small calculation how to adjust it. For example, if you want to adjust it because of fuse rating, if you have a fuse 20 or 63, then based on that, if you want to limit, you have to calculate in the watts. Then you have to enter the watt power here. Or in case if you have this new Gen 24, and if you want to limit your output power or the feed-in power into the system, then you will have an option directly under the setup menu. If you activate same way, you have to access the interface page. Whenever you want to do some setting change in the data manager or the pilot, you have to access the interface page. This is not possible remotely unless the customer open a port forwarding in his router. So if he open a port in his router, then he will allow you to access his system remotely. Then you can do this. Otherwise, you have to be on site. You have to be in the same network as the inverter to access this interface page. So as soon as you activate the inverter with the button one touch, and then you can access the interface page. Then you can go directly to the setup menu. Under the setup menu, you will have the option called dynamic power limit. Then you can choose the total DC power of the system, and then what is the maximum allowed grid feed-in power. You can enter it in the same way. You can enter it in the watts or by percentage. You can tell it. So now we are almost to the end of this webinar. So what is the conclusion? Why do I need a smart meter? Well, in the first place, I can use the smart meter so that I can connect additional devices, or I can monitor my consumption data, or I can control the output power or feed-in power of the system. So what do I do with the consumption data? In case if you have at least 1 year of data, because the 1 year of the data is necessary for correct simulation. Otherwise, in summer, the consumption will be different. In winter, the consumption of different loads are different. So that's why it's very important to have 1 year data. So if you have 1 year of consumption data in the SolarWeb, you can simulate the system for home pilot, or you can simulate it for the battery storage. So in case in the left side, if you say like, what if I install a BYD battery of 6.4 kilowatt hour, then my self-consumption increased to 82%. So based on my 1 year consumption data, this system can simulate and tell how much I can increase my self-consumption. The right side, if you see, this is for something for the home pilot. So based on the consumption data, then I can tell what is the source I'm using. Is it oil or gas? Because it's important to compare the prices, expenses, and then you can simulate and tell how much I can increase the self-consumption if I put a home pilot to my existing system. And then it can also show you within how many years you will get back your money for this installation spent. Yeah, so the primary smart meter is the basic thing. You can retrofit for any solution, like if you want to use a home pilot or load management or the output power reduction, dynamic power reduction, or battery storage. It's very important to have a primary smart meter at least. And then energy profiling for detailed analysis. So if you want to have a look at your individual consumption of any specific load, like a heating or air conditioning uh, or the swimming pool or whatever, then you need a additional smart meter in this case. And then simply, if you want to do the online monitoring, then you can see detailed system data in the SolarWeb if you use the smart meter. So using a smart meter, I don't know how much it costs in your currency. For me, compared to a PV system, smart meter is nothing. But when I install it, it's really beneficial for as an installer. For me, it's really beneficial, and also for the customer, it's very important to understand his consumption so that he can direct channelize his production to the right way. Because countries like Denmark, you don't get any money if you feed into the grid. For example, in the picture top right corner, you see the green color. This is the energy he fed into the grid. If he is from Denmark, if the customer is from Denmark, this all energy is for nothing. Maybe he can switch one or two load from the night into the daytime, or he can put a battery to save this energy and use it later in the night. So that's in this case, in this picture, exact picture, he's already having a home pilot and the battery, but maybe he can redirect it to EV charging or whatever. I don't know. I'm just telling. So it's very important to have a smart meter. It doesn't cost much, but it does a lot of job, good job for you and the customer. Well, for further information about how to do the commissioning with a detailed version, because I have shown very short, like brief introduction about commissioning. So if you want to have a detailed instruction manual or installation instruction, then you can find it in our web page in the installer support area. Or if you want to have more trainings or webinars, please go to the Fronius Solar Energy and then the info center. You can see, or you can simply click this link. Then you will reach the events page where you can find all our trainings and webinar. Or if you want to watch the video tutorials already, the old webinars or tutorials, then you can go to our YouTube channel. Then we have Solar Energy channel. You can watch our videos for free. So thanks for listening. I will send this presentation to all of you who participated or registered. Now I